like to welcome the families of our distinguished honorees and their presenters. I'd like to welcome our Golf Association committee members and the many guests who have come here to beautiful Bellevue Country Club to share in this wonderful tribute to two of the club's own amateur golf stars, Ginny Allen and Alan Foster. First, I'd like to give you just a little bit of background about the Hall of Fame. As your program indicates, the New York State Golf Association Hall of Fame was officially established on November 10th of 2012. Up to that time, there were several regional golf associations that had their own halls, recognizing local service and regional accomplishments. But there was nothing statewide, on any statewide level. What the founders of the committee saw was a glaring need for a Hall of Fame that would recognize the entire state's finest amateur and professional competitive golfers, as well as those individuals across the entire state who have made outstanding contributions to the game of golf. The Hall of Fame induction criteria are fairly simple. A nominee must have a relationship to New York State, either by birth or residence, or their accomplishments must have brought acclaim to New York State. All must have demonstrated their love of the game of golf, which is reflected in their competitive golf career as an amateur, a professional, or even both. Their well-documented career as a golf teacher, coach, or mentor, or their long history of volunteerism to the game of golf in New York, or to the organizations that administer and promote golf in the state, or their widely recognized contributions and unique impact on golf in New York State. Now, the ultimate goal of the Hall of Fame is to enshrine a broad spectrum of candidates representing all the aforementioned criteria and hailing from a wide-ranging region throughout the entire state. We've had 11 inductees so far. 6 were tournament competitors. Don Allen of Rochester, Bill Tryon of Elmira, Ray Billows of Poughkeepsie, John Konsek of Buffalo, Lancey Smith from Buffalo, all of whom are amateurs, and Sam Rosetta of Rochester, who had a distinguished amateur career before moving to the PGA as a competitor and a longtime teaching pro. 2 other inductees have been selfless, longtime volunteers and mentors to so many golfers in New York State. The late Betty Dealey, who lived northwest of Rome in Rossvale, and Tom Reedy of Elmira. And Tom is with us this evening. Tom, would you just get recognized, please? The remaining 3 inductees were Grantland Rice, a renowned golf journalist who lived on Long Island, Fred Box, an invaluable golf historian from Elmira, and Donald Ross, whose world-famous golf course designs are found throughout the state. All made important and unique contributions to New York golf. Now, this is the Hall's 3rd induction class. The committee is going to continue to refine its selection procedures and in the future hopes to broaden the statewide involvement in the selection of future Hall of Famers. This year, the process of the selection of candidates for induction owes much to one member of our committee. His encyclopedic knowledge of golf history in New York has provided the committee an invaluable resource in detailing the accomplishments of our candidates. I'd like to recognize John Blaine, our committee member. John? And John, thanks for so much of your work. Without it, we couldn't get anything done. And now, the Hall of Fame will proceed to induct 2 more outstanding amateur competitors. And what essential characteristic do they share with all the previous inductees? Well, they all possess an unrelenting love of the game of golf and have combined that with a tremendous talent and the dedication to work hard and to realize their potential. It is most fitting that both Ginny Allen and Alan Foster now take their place for all time among their peers in New York State Hall of Fame. And now to present our first honoree, the late Virginia Allen, we welcome Gretchen Burns. Gretchen's a good longtime friend of the family. Gretchen said she's had the honor of playing against Ginny. She'll tell you whether it was successful.
Good evening. I'm very honored to be asked to be here to talk about my good friend, Mrs. Allen. She always said to me, Gretchen, we're friends, you can call me Ginny. And I said, I can't call you Ginny. You're like my idol, you're my mentor, and you're friends with my mom and dad, and I have to show respect. And when I played in district, there was one other mom that I always called by her Mrs., and her name was Mrs. Naton. Everybody knows Pete Naton and Michael Naton. Well, she was my lunch lady at St. Anne's, so she was always Mrs. Naton, and everybody would laugh. You call Mrs. A. How do I get to call the special name? And I just said, they're special people. And coming up here to Bellevue is so good to me because it's where I met Mrs. Allen. I'm glad she left Lakeshore, and I'm glad she came to Bellevue. And when I was 15, I played my first match with her up here, and before we played, my dad said, now, Ginny's a very serious golfer. When she's playing her competitive matches, she won't talk. She's very into her game, and you know, it doesn't mean anything against you. So we're playing, and I'm walking. Mrs. A's talking to me down the first fairway, and I'm going, I'm looking at my dad, but my dad's not declared my caddy, so I can't talk to my dad. Mrs. A told me that. And she taught me a lot of things, and on the golf course, there could be no two different people in America. Mrs. A was the most gracious, graceful, beautiful woman that I ever met. Look at her pictures. She could have been a movie star. And I asked my sister Mary Ann, who's 14 years older than me, and she's comparable to Ginny and Phil. And she said, everybody used to just say her dimples. Her dimples are what everybody saw when they saw Mrs. Allen. And I was like, okay. And then talked to a couple of the district players, and they were all like, you know, Mrs. A was always very embracing of the new golfers. T. Cleland said that when she first started and didn't know anything, and T was a lot like me, we played basketball, we played volleyball, we played all these other sports, and in all those sports, your adrenaline was your energy, and in golf, you have to learn to turn that off and just let golf happen. And Mrs. A was the epitome of that. Not that she wasn't competitive, but she knew how to win, she knew how to play a golf course. Plus, she had a big advantage. Every golf course knew when she was playing. She would get every kick, she would get every putt to fall, and I'd say, okay, she hit it like that, I'm gonna hit it like that, and I'd 3-4 putt. And so Mrs. A, and she was a notebook person. She took everything down on notes, so I'm taking it to the next generation. I'm using my iPhone because I'm terrible at things, and I'm not texting, I'm just reading my notes. And now I can't even find them. I'm such a nervous wreck. But when she won the seniors, my mom and dad were at Lake Placid with them, and my dad, for anybody that knows my dad, he took movies and pictures. He was a big believer. If you could see what you were doing, you could improve. And he goes, oh my gosh, Ginny won the seniors. Oh my gosh, she's the best golfer. And they used to play a lot of golf, and they play that snake game. They all had all these thousands of games that they would play. And and I'm gonna go all over the place here, but ever since Ginny asked me to come here and kind of talk about Mrs. A, everything that came to me was Mr. Allen. They were a team, and again, I know them as the caboose. I'm coming in, you know, Mrs. A is on her, you know, late 70s, early 80s. I'm still skating, and she was supportive of me with my skating in golf, and but everything was Mr. and Mrs. A. I would play golf with them, and it'd be hysterical. We'd say, Mr. A, come on up, Sue Heidechek and I would play. We'd say, come on, play the ladies' tees with us. I'm not playing the ladies' tees. I said, play the red tees. He'd play the red tees, and Sue and I would move back to the white tees. Well, I'll tell you, we never even came close to beating him. He got on that front tee and just was quite the golfer. And the other thing I have about Mr. A was that he played an orange golf ball. And I couldn't get the white golf ball into the hole. And one day we were playing, and Mr. A goes, here, why don't you try this? And he throws me the ball on the 16th tee. And I go, eagle, par, birdie. The next tournament is the Babe Zaharias, which was a huge women's tournament here in Syracuse. And I played the orange golf ball. And Chuck Hardy was writing articles about Gretchen Burns playing an orange golf ball, all because of Phil Allen. And, but it's all in your mind. What you think is what you do. And then there was this tournament that I always valued very much. It was called Ginny Allen Day. It started out as kind of a joke, not as a joke. A lot of women would say, you know, they need to raise money for the scholarship fund that the SWGGA gives out to college students. And Rosie Mahoney said, well, you know what? The easiest tournament to have is just to invite all the people that Ginny Allen has beaten, and we'll have a full field. And that's how Ginny Allen Day started. That was the premise behind it. And my mom used to run the tournament with Ginny and our dining room table, and I'm from a family of 11, so our dining room table was huge, and my mother would have checks and teas, and Mrs. Allen would come over with her notebook and go, now Ann, we'll make sure we do this and this, and they were quite the team together. And then in 1991, when Mrs. A's 50th anniversary of her state championship, I remember I called Betty Dealey and I said, you know, the states are at Tuscarora. I hope the state's doing something nice for Ginny Allen. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it, Gretchen, we got it covered. And my dad's going, now Gretchen, are you playing a practice round at Tuscarora? Gretchen, are you gonna do this and that? And I'm like, what does he care? I don't. So the last Ginny Allen Day, when Flip the Fourth here was a baby, okay? That was in 1991, right? He was a baby here. That was the last Ginny Allen Day. Was it 95? I think. Whatever. I didn't play the practice round at Tuscarora because I didn't play practice rounds at the places of the tournaments because the course would change drastically from the day of the practice round and the day of the tournament. And come to find out, I missed medalist at Tuscarora by one shot. What is the new medalist trophy in honor of Ginny Allen's 50th victory of the thing? And all the Allen, you little guys that are all the parents and stuff, you guys were all there for your grandmother's 50th anniversary of her state championship. And then Sally went on to win it. And but going back to being different, I was a very hothead on the golf course. People can't believe that now that I was like a hothead, but like I just was a hothead. And one year out here, I played 6 extra holes with Karen Koulis, and I lost on the 6th hole. And I just didn't know what to do, so I just turned and started walking down 7, over old 11, through the range, and guess who's right behind me? Ginny Allen. She goes, now Gretchen, slow down, be careful, you're okay. And it was all that kind of stuff that she kept encouraging me to stay with golf, to be positive, and just enjoy the game, meet all the kinds of people that I've met through golf. And I'm gonna get real quick here in a second. A lot of people ask me, you know, do you still play golf? And I said, no. The last couple years, I've had some eye issues and hand issues. And I remember visiting Mrs. A up at her other house, and she had that macular degeneration, or whatever you call it. I'm not a good speaker. And I just said, God, they've got to find something for that. And 3 years ago, I went to the eye doctor. And I had wet macular degeneration in this eye and dry in that eye. And I just said, wow. And I just said, Mrs. A always told me, find something besides golf, because you're not gonna always be able to play golf. And then I had some hand issues, and had trigger fingers and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's tough getting old, really, you know. And so my eyes are doing better, my hands are doing good, and I started playing golf this year, again, for 3 years. And I play at Butternut Creek. It's the best golf course around. And Mrs. A was a great person. Mr. A was even a better person, because I can tell you, when a wife, a mom, wins golf tournaments, she knows her husband's happy and her kids are being taken care of by her husband. And for Mrs. A to continue to play the type of golf that she did all the years that she was married, she was loved by a man that really cared for her. And he, in his own right, was one hell of an athlete. And my husband will always go, yeah, I know what Phil Allen feels like and stuff. But what about SU last night? What do you think they're all doing up there in heaven tonight, you know? And, but I just want to thank you that, and just so you guys know a little bit about Mrs. Allen, she was the only non-family member to come to my wedding. I come from a huge family, and I didn't want to have to pick and choose, because if you invite one cousin, you got to invite these 13 cousins and all this stuff. And I just said, the only people I want at my wedding are Phil and Ginny Allen. And they were the only outsiders at my wedding. And I just love them more than anything. And I'm honored that she's in the Hall of Fame. And I'm honored to have played golf, caddied for her, and been her friend. So thank you. And I'd like to present to Phil and Ginny the plaque for their mom. Come on, Ginny. I'm giving it to you, not your brother. Thanks. This is awarded to Virginia Guilfoil Allen, New York State Golf Association, induction ceremony, class of 2017, Bellevue Country Club, October 14th, 2017. Here, you can. Oh, they want
Gretchen, you're an Iron Man getting that out. I mean, I was tearing up listening to it, and my heart is very close to my tear ducts. So bear with me, all right? It was beautiful. She did support you in everything. She thought you were a great person, great golfer, obviously. Great skater. I don't know if anybody knows that, but she was a great, were you in the Olympics?
No, it's kind of like the
It was
putt
close.
north-south tournament.
Okay, well, that's close enough. You were there. That's good.
Closer to that thing.
I try out.
Thank you. The one thing, who was that? The one thing that Mom had going all the time was, I mean, she was a very nice person, but she was interested in junior golf. She wanted kids to fall in love with this game. She, I think she's done it. We have a family with 13 grandchildren, and everybody lives here in Syracuse. And there's a couple of the grandchildren who love the game. They're absolutely hooked. And I know that Mom, Graham, would be looking down on them and being proud that they're doing that. She was, if she was here getting this award, the first thing she'd do would she would downplay all her, all the ability that she had, all the positive things, and she would focus it on people that she met and played with and learned from. She learned from along the way. I caddied for quite a bit in tournaments here at Bellevue, and I really wasn't into golf. I mean, she tried to get me into it when I was 14, and I didn't want anything to do with it. She took me up to Bucky Hewitt, and Bucky gave me a lesson, and I hit it all over the place like anybody would do when they're first starting. But I didn't have any friends that played golf. And today, a lot of the juniors do have friends that play golf. And I think if I'd have had it back then, and I knew the bloodline that I had from my mother, I probably would have. I would have really gotten into it. I have gotten into it over time, as a lot of you know. Most of them have money in their pockets from me. But she played. She was a representative a good representative of Bellevue and Lakeshore, and wherever she went, there was never going to be an argument. There wasn't going to be any. Everybody's going to like in that group. They're going to like each other. Even if you didn't, you would by the end of the day. And she was real good in bad situations. There were times when I'd caddy for her, and she'd hit it in some squirrely place, very unusual, but she'd never get mad. She'd just keep going and play a great game. So there was one mom that she played with a bunch of fine golfers, including Patty Berg. I'm sure you've heard of Patty Berg, great pro, and also a wonderful person and a legend, literally a legend in the world of golf. Patty ran several cancer fundraisers down in Florida, in Fort Myers, where I met her in Fort Myers. And as soon as I said Phil Allen, it was like the eyes lit right up. She had cancer at the time and couldn't talk. But Mom's name got her day going real good that day. I said she loves junior golf. She could never forget how the ladies in district golf here were so kind to her when she was, 17, and she was great, not great, but she was a lot better than the older ladies that she was playing. And they all treated her well, and she always remembered that. Grantland Rice, you heard his name earlier. He's written some great books about golf and about famous people in golf. And one of the things he did, he met Mom several times and just loved her, to the point that he wrote a poem about her. And if my assistant will pull out the sheet, this poem it goes to the tune of Carry Me Back to Old Virginia. Now, it's hard for me to read without my eyes filling up. So, Ginny and I are going to sing it.
The words are his.
Huh?
The words are his.
Oh, yeah, this is not for me. This is Grantland Rice wrote this. He'd be turning over in his grave right now if he knows that.
So the tune might not be real
Yeah,
good,
the
but
tune is going to be a little shaky, but here we go. Remember, you're going to go louder, and I'm going to go.
I know.
Where's the mic? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Carry me back to young Virginia. That's where the brassies and the mashy shots are best.
That's where her irons find the pin that is waiting.
That's where the niblick and the putter meet the test. Carry me back to young Virginia. I hear the east winds of Syracuse still call.
But playing with her as I'd like to do sometime.
How can I ever keep
My
eye on the ball? thanks especially to the New York State Golf Association, and we really appreciate all the work you do.
Yep.
And if you could get something I could read without crying.
We love you, Mom and Dad.
Hard to follow that. Presenting our second inductee this evening, who's the legendary Bellevue member Alan Foster, will be Alan's longtime friend and fellow golf competitor, and I'm sure he can tell what that's like. Greg Thorpe.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, you'll notice at our table that there's someone missing. And it's a couple people missing, but the main recipient is missing. Alan this morning, or yesterday, I'm sorry, had another accident, essentially resulting in him tearing his left quad tendon. He's up at St. Joseph's Hospital recovering from the surgery. The way we got word of this, he was supposed to be interviewed by Perry Noun this morning. And Perry calls him last night, or Al calls Perry, he says, hey, I can't be on your show. He says, I'm in the hospital. Knowing Al, as a lot of you do, that's all he said. So Perry didn't really know what was going on. The Christians hear about this in Florida somehow. I think the Christians hear about everything in Florida. But they hear about this. Phil had called me. Phil didn't know anything about it. Or he knew about it, but he didn't know what happened. The Christians then called Jimmy Ganadas, who then calls John Helm, who was playing with Randy Young out at Tuscarora in a best ball tournament. And Randy texts me, basically, what's going on. So I then called Lynn, and Lynn had just gotten to the hospital. And as I said, Al had gone in last night, and had just had surgery at about 7:30. Lynn at that time didn't know anything, didn't know exactly how it had gone or anything of that nature. So I called back Randy, and he says, he didn't fall off his bike again, did he? I said, no, he didn't. No, he has had three very serious bike accidents over the last couple of years, which he recovered from nicely. And hopefully he'll recover from this one, but he called me this afternoon. I'm not gonna say he's feeling good, or they think the surgery went well, but he really does not feel well, and I'm not sure I've ever heard him more despondent because he couldn't make this event. He was really looking forward to it. You know, I said to him, that's a heck of a way to get out of having to get up and make a speech, but that being said, he really is very disappointed that he's not here, and so am I. But the show must go on, so you guys have to endure about 10 or 15 minutes of me talking about Al. First of all, if you'll indulge me a bit, I would, before I discuss Al and his merits, I would like to offer my personal congratulations to the Allen family, which is about half the room, or more. And they're all big. And Gretchen really was terrific, and Phil and Jenny as well. And they're 100% right in what they said. I've been at Bellevue forever, and as a young boy, I had the good fortune of caddying for Mrs. Allen on numerous occasions, both here at Bellevue and in local tournaments. She was obviously an accomplished golfer, but she was an even better person on and off the course. Everything that Gretchen said is 100% true, and more. And as Gretchen said, I'm not sure I've ever met anyone more gracious. When I was 24, my father died at the age of 51 leaving my mother and 6 children, me being the oldest. Ginny and her husband Phil, and again, I agree with everything Gretchen said about Phil, gave my mother a job in their family business, and to a great extent that helped keep her going for a while during a very tough time for our family. The money was certainly helpful, but the job also gave my mother something in her life other than worrying about the 6 of us. My mother is still alive, approaching 98, and if she were here tonight, she would say that the Allens were lifesavers. There was some reference to Phil moving to the front tees, Phil Sr. And that being said, I still take great pleasure giving Phil Jr. the needle every time he steps up to the gold tees. He's the first of our group to do it, but I suspect some of the rest of us are not far behind. And most of us are here, so, you know, when Alan asked if I would present him for induction, not surprisingly, we were in a golf cart partnering up here at Bellevue. Without hesitation, I responded that I would be both pleased and honored to do so. Forgive me for somewhat parroting the program, but it's difficult not to in this situation. Also, forgive me for going on a bit longer than maybe I should, and even longer now that, you know, I had to tell the story about how he got hurt. In addition to reciting some of his stats, if you will, I feel a more personal perspective on Alan and his accomplishments is also in order. While the program and other publications say Alan was raised in Waterbury, he assures me he was born in Prospect, Connecticut, November 1942. Like many of us, he was introduced to the game by his father. He quickly learned to play the game at a decent level, lettering in high school and at DePaul University in Indiana. But he never did a great deal competitively until many years later. Following his graduation from DePaul, Alan went to medical school at the University of Indiana, where he met the future Mrs. Foster, Lynn Reed, of Little Rock, Arkansas. After completion of medical school in 1970, Alan and Lynn relocated to Syracuse, where Alan did a 1-year internship at St. Joseph's Hospital, followed by a 4-year residency at SUNY Upstate Medical University, which led to his ultimate career in radiology with a group that was affiliated with St. Joseph's Hospital. When Alan started with the group in 1975, I believe it consisted of 7 or 8 physicians working primarily out of the hospital. As time passed, he became involved in the management of the group, and under his leadership, the group grew to over 20 physicians and numerous support personnel working in multiple locations, some of which the group had actually purchased along the way. As some of you know, leading a group of intelligent, confident, and yes, headstrong people can be extremely difficult at times. And as Alan's friend and attorney, I saw the toll it sometimes took on him. However, because of his strong will and character, not to mention a very supportive spouse, he was seemingly able to compartmentalize that part of his life without it adversely affecting what was going on outside of work. Lynn may have a different take on it, but that was my perception anyway. Right? Yeah, maybe. His ability to focus on the course, in spite of outside distractions, never ceased to amaze me. I suspect you're wondering a bit about Al's golfing exploits, but at the time he started his career, they really hadn't happened yet. I have a son who's a physician. I can tell you from firsthand exposure that while one is in medical school and involved in post-medical school training for one specialty, it's not an ideal time to hone your short game skills. During those years, golf took a backseat to starting a career and also starting a family. Al and Lynn have 2 children, Jeffrey and Diana, and 5 grandchildren. Al and I first met in 1973 when we were attempting to qualify for what was then known as the Herald Amateur. This was and still is a unique and challenging event where one has to qualify to get into the field either by having some form of status from prior tournament experience or by shooting a qualifying score. Once the actual tournament starts, it's played over 4 different courses on 4 successive days, with the field being cut after each of the first 3 rounds. I was just finishing up law school and Alan was involved in his residency. We had an enjoyable round, got to know each other a bit, both qualified with, as I recall, decent scores, went on our way. I don't remember that either of us had a particularly good tournament that year, but Alan went on to win the event in 1980 and 1986. I suspect he would have won it more, but for the fact that it was played during the week. He would have had to take vacation time to play in it, so it wasn't something he did on a regular basis. This, by the way, was the case with a number of events during that period of time. Alan was never one who played in all of the tournaments all of the time. I believe my supposition regarding the Herald is given credence by the fact that he won the Jerry Ash Memorial, a 3-round medal event played Friday through Sunday, a record 8 times between 1982 and 1997. For good measure, he rounded out his local resume by winning the post-standard senior amateur 1999 and 2009, as well as many other lesser events too numerous to mention. As I stated previously, Alan and I first met in the summer of 1973. The next time we met was in the spring of 1974 on the putting green over in front of the pro shop here. Al had just joined the club. We renewed acquaintances and started a friendship that has lasted to this day. I think Al would agree with my assessment that joining Bellevue was one of the elements that contributed to its upcoming successes. In spite of its relative lack of distance, with its narrow fairways, difficult lies, and sometimes treacherous greens, the course can eat up even the best of players. There's no doubt that Alan had, and still has, up until yesterday anyway, wonderful skills, particularly his short game and putting, which were as good as just about anyone at the amateur level. Additionally, he has the ability to focus better than most, and his course management is second to none. But playing such a challenging course on a regular basis allowed him to test and improve his skills against very good competition. Little plug for Bellevue now. At one time, we had over 100 single-digit handicappers here, including many of the finest players in the area. But Al was able to still capture the club championship 13 times. I didn't really believe that. I saw it on John's little thing. I said, he didn't win it 13 times. But I went down and counted, he won it 13 times. The senior club championship 8 times and the super senior title 4 times. Al was to become much more than a good club player. And the first indication of that was when he won the New York State Men's Amateur here at Bellevue in 1975. Yes, it was his home course, but he'd only been here a year at that point. As I recall, he led wire to wire, and if memory serves, he had only 1 3-putt green the whole tournament, which is testament to what I said about his putting. To me, however, the most remarkable thing about that tournament was the first round. And anybody who's played competitive golf, and obviously there are a lot of you here, you're going to really know what I'm talking about. Al was not yet a name player, so he's not given any kind of preferential pairing. One has to have a low handicap and shoot a qualifying score to get into the field, and I'm sure his playing companions were respectable players. But as I said, Bellevue can get the best of even good players. Well, one of these gentlemen was shooting over 100, and the other was shooting in the high 90s. Alan turned in a remarkable 69. Now that's pretty incredible for those of you who have played tournament golf. If that doesn't give evidence of his ability to focus, I don't know what would. This event also gave rise to one of the nicknames that some of us hung on Alan over the years, and there are many. And there will now be more, obviously. there was a picture of Al in an article, trim and balding, or T&B for short, stuck for a while. Now, you all have that program. Take a look at, if you haven't already, take a look at the program, and you'll see what the Times writer was talking about. And you gotta love the shorts and the socks. I mean, it was the look at the time, and Al's never been, you know, accused of being a great dresser on the golf course, second only to Terry Hoffman. But, or Peter Rhodes. Peter's here somewhere, so where do you leave? But that's a great picture. And I think, I tried to verify, Jim's not here, and I tried to verify this. John's not sure, John Helm's not sure, but if you look at the far left of that picture, I believe you'll spot a young Jim Roy, all the way on the left, who went on to have quite a nice career in the game for himself. Indirectly, another Allen's monikers was also spawned as a result of that victory. Back when amateur golf got its fair share of newspaper coverage, Allen was often referred to as Dr. Alan Foster, former New York State men's amateur champion. It seemed appropriate that Dr. Foster be dubbed Dr. Former. He was called other things at times, but in the interest of good taste, we won't go there tonight. Although my wife Ellen had a good comment when she heard about him getting hurt. She said, you know, maybe Calamity Jane would fit as well. In addition to his win in '75, Allen won the New York State Men's Mid-Amateur Tournament in '92 and '95, Men's Senior Amateur in 2002, and upon winning the 2009 Men's Super Senior title, he became the only player to date who has won all 4 of these events. I think it's worthy to note that in addition to the 5 victories, he finished second in these events 8 times. Basically, when he was in the field, he was a contender. Al started to test himself against national and international players when he ventured to St. Andrews to play the British Amateur in 1981. There he qualified into match play, eventually losing to a Walker Cupper in the 3rd round, after defeating defending champion Duncan Evans in the 2nd. Earlier this week, Allen said, everyone thought the guy was on a path to greatness, but it never happened. Having the kind of relationship we have allowed me to respond that in all likelihood, Mr. Evans was undoubtedly never able to recover from that loss. Al played nationally and internationally sporadically during the late 80s and early to mid 90s with some success, but playing and succeeding on those stages became the norm as a senior player. While Allen already had a wonderful resume when he was inducted into the Greater Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame in 2000, many of his golfing highlights happened after that time. A number of his senior accomplishments are detailed in the program. Others are not. But there are a few that really stand out for me. Obviously, winning the British Senior Amateur in 2005 and the British Super Senior title in 2007 are outstanding victories. To me, however, his play in the U.S. Senior Amateur is equally as impressive, and maybe more so, frankly. It could be argued that the field in that event each year is as strong as any in senior amateur golf. Getting to the semifinals in 2004 and 2005, when Al was 61 and 62 respectively, is no small feat. Making it that far also gave Al an entree into the U.S. Senior Open in 2005 and 2006. I accompanied Alan and Lynn to Hutchinson, Kansas, and caddied for Al at Prairie Dunes. While he didn't qualify for the final 2 rounds, I think he would have if his putter hadn't let him down for really one of the few times ever, really. I've never seen rough like they had there before or since. Alan Doyle went on to win the event, mentioned on the practice tee that the rough was worse than it had been at the U.S. Open at Wingfoot earlier that year. Nevertheless, Alan was competitive. Standing on the practice grounds with the likes of Tom Watson, Curtis Strange, Fuzzy Zeller, Ben Crenshaw, and many, many others of that ilk was a wonderful experience for both Alan and I. Alan has made the decision that his competitive career is pretty much over, but he is nonetheless still very much a competitor. Ask anyone who plays with him if you need verification. I suspect his goal now is not only to beat us up every time out, but also to shoot his age or better each time he tees it up, which, by the way, he's done about 40 times so far. And please God, he does it a lot more after this thing he's going through now. While Alan can sometimes be perceived as gruff and aloof, that perception couldn't be further from the truth. He can be very caring and loyal, and for proof of that, ask anyone that ever worked for him, or the scores of people who've gone to him for medical advice about themselves or a relative, and you'll hear about the real Alan Foster. Being a world-class amateur golfer is certainly a wonderful legacy to have, but it pales in comparison to being a good human being, and Al is both, as far as I'm concerned. There's so many more stories that I could tell, such as when I caddied for Al when he played with Lee Trevino, and the long discussion we had in the Drummond's locker room after the round was rained out. But Billy Moore or Andrew Hickey, or for that matter, John Helm or Randy Young, will have the hook out very quickly if I continue. As we all know, golf is truly a challenging, often frustrating, yet wonderful game, whether playing in competition or with our friends at the club. You really get to know a lot about a person, spending 4 hours with them on the course, and even more when that time spans hundreds of rounds spread over 44 years. I've had the good fortune of having a front row seat from the beginning of Alan's wonderful competitive golfing adventure, and it has been quite a show. The committee made the right choice, and it gives me great pleasure to present my oft-times playing partner and dear friend, Dr. Alan Foster, for induction as a member of the third class into the New York State Golf Association Hall of Fame. And accepting on Alan's behalf will be his son, Jeffrey. I take these off.
I agree with everything that Greg said. My father is an incredible man. Obviously, I have looked up to him my whole life. He's been a pillar in my life. It's interesting to get other people's perspective on someone that I just knew as Dad. It's interesting to hear stories from other people about how wonderful my father is. I don't have all those experiences, so it's well, not like you think. I haven't experienced those things in the way that you have experienced them. So I'm happy. He's very upset he couldn't be here tonight. He's like Greg said, despondent. I spoke with him on the phone earlier. He wanted me to tell everyone that it was not a bicycle accident. Greg covered this. He wishes he could be here. He's thrilled that he was able to receive this honor, and we're all thankful as well. So thank you very much on behalf of my father.
On behalf of the Hall of Fame committee and the entire New York State Golf Association family, I'd like to thank our presenters, Gretchen Burns and Greg Thornton, and offer our deepest congratulations to the family of Ginny Allen, her son Phil Allen Jr. and daughter Ginny Russo, and of course to Dr. Alan Foster, for whom we wish a complete and hopefully very speedy recovery. I believe I speak for everyone here when I say it is truly an honor to be here with you, whether in body or spirit, to share in these so well-deserved inductions. And now, completing the Bellevue Country Club membership cartel, I'd like to introduce Executive Director of New York State, Bill Moore, of course, a Bellevue member. And Bill will provide our closing remarks.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. I started working here in 1987, and I was telling Joe Sprague from the USGA that Jerry Steelsmith sent me out to the range with a hard hat and paid me $6 cash to pick up the range every night. And in exchange, I got to hit balls for free here. And to grow up at Bellevue is an amazing thing, and I'm just so honored to be here tonight. Dr. Foster's been after me for years to start a Hall of Fame for the New York State Golf Association. I think secretly hoping that one day he would be here to revel in this great event. But to be around two great golfing families, speaking of the Allens, I've been fortunate enough, and I didn't get to know Mrs. Allen very well when I worked here, but obviously I've known Phil, Flip. Gretchen let Flips slip a little bit, his longtime nickname around here, and I played with Jeff the other day. We had a nice time, and I remember when I started working here, I was 14. I worked a lot of Tuesday morning ladies leagues, and I was a young punk, and I couldn't break 100, and I was out here mooing to Jerry one day about, I'm here every Tuesday morning, and these ladies, they're out there and they don't hit the ball anywhere, and what a nightmare this is. So I remember Jerry literally grabbed me by the back of my shirt and put me in the cart, and we drove out to the first tee, and Mrs. Allen was teeing off, and he goes, "That, Billy, is probably the most accomplished golfer you'll ever meet." And he was right. I couldn't believe it. And when he started filling me in on her accomplishments, and to hear some of these stories today, it was such an honor to know her a little bit and to get to know all the Allens who are members here. And Phil and I played a lot of competitive golf together, and I wish him all the best for those gold tees. I can't wait for him to, for Randy and those guys to, his fellow Audi competitors to head up there and play those gold tees. And then I turn to my left to the Fosters, who I've known for a long time. Phil's waving the white flag over here. Helmster, I'm not saying what you did over there, but I've known the Fosters probably since I moved to Syracuse into Fayetteville in 1986. I used to ski with Diana at Toggenburg. Jeff's wife Kate and I used to ride the bus together to high school when we were kids. But for those of you that are here, and not all of you probably know this, but Al Foster was my golfing hero. And so to be here tonight and see him inducted in this Hall of Fame is really a special event for me. My dad brought me up here in 1989 to the Mid-Am, and Tom Flynn won the Mid-Am that year, but my committee members are here, were there that day, and it was the Saturday of the Mid-Am, end of September, had to be about 34 degrees. I mean, it was practically snowing. I think Elmster's nodded his head. I think a lot of people remember. It did snow. Thanks, Tom. Another beautiful Syracuse fall. And I remember Doc got up in the second round and hit like a 1 or 2 iron off the first tee, and I couldn't hit it over the hill in those days. And I thought, this is the coolest cat I've ever seen, hitting a 1 iron off this tee, and it's 34 degrees. Doc was always so nice to me, and always gave me advice about golf, helped me when I was having trouble, helped me with my putting, which was still a disaster, taught me about the claw when I thought I was never going to play again. I was telling some people earlier that I think I've cried out of happiness maybe 3 times in my life. 2 of them were when my 2 daughters were born, and the 3rd time was when I beat Foster in the semifinals of the Syracuse District Amateur in 1997. So I couldn't be more honored to be here tonight. I'd like to thank Joe Enright from our Hall of Fame chairman, who did an unbelievable job tonight putting this together and getting everyone here. Dan Thompson and Andrew Hickey, who put the program together. Thank you guys. And most of all at the end, Deb Spillman, who's hiding in the corner, who put this unbelievable dinner together for us to share in these 2 great golf careers. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and sharing this evening with us. We appreciate it. Have a safe trip home. Thank you.